Chapter 686, A Hard-to-Complete Ritual. After thinking for a moment, Klein, who didn't have an answer, put away the thin blood crystal when he didn't sense any danger from it. Then he bent down to inspect Kirkeis's devil form, which had lost half its head.
I wonder if I can still use this to exchange for a bounty, and if so, how much can I get? I have no idea who I can contact from the military over here. Send Oz Kent a telegram? This back and forth, together with the work he has to do remotely, it's hard to tell if it will finish in 3 to 4 days. I'll be leaving tomorrow. Also, I can't forget the middleman's cut.
He mumbled, walked to the side, and picked up the clearly charred half-top hat and wore it. Then he dragged the heavy and massive devil's corpse and walked to the door before reaching out to open the door. Mate. A howling wind blew in, breaking the silence in the room. Klein tapped his finger joint to deactivate the spirit-body thread's vision as he continued dragging the nasty and terrifying devil's corpse across the corridor, down the stairs to the first floor. At that moment, there weren't many people left in the bar. Tables and chairs were overturned, and there were shards everywhere. It was a mess. Klein went past the heavily damaged staircase and into the main hall. He surveyed the area and found the forlorn bar owner behind the bar counter. Few of the bouncers he hired had remained. Most had scattered off. Dap, dap, dap. Klein walked over one step at a time with the devil corpse behind him bumping into the furniture. Ah, tat, 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 tat. The owner took a step back as he yelled at the top of his lungs.
What are you planning to do?
His bouncers gathered over, shuddering in fear. Their eyes were darting around as their bodies revealed their own inclinations. It appeared as though they would immediately flee the moment any incident happened. Klein stopped in his tracks, throwing Kirkeis's corpse in front of him. Then, he said in a deep voice,
Can you claim bounty rewards?
The owner was stunned for a second, as he instinctively moved his gaze down before seeing the huge devil's corpse, which still had some blue flames lingering around it. He and his bouncers drew a cold gasp at the same time, many of them feeling surreal. This was a real devil. Apart from its lack of curled goat horns, it looked identical to the devils described in the church's Bibles or mythical stories. To ordinary people living in the pirates' playground, it wasn't rare to witness supernatural powers. Here, their horizons were clearly broader than the colonies of Orvie and the civilians of the kingdom's native soil. However, as the owner and bouncers of a bar, they had never seen real devils before. They even suspected that it was an attempt by the church to tarnish unofficial beyonders. The owner retracted his gaze, with great difficulty, as he looked at the stoic adventurer in tattered clothes.
I can. They should have the means to determine that this is Kirkeis, Corapannes. Cheese, right?
Klein silently heaved a sigh of relief and silently nodded. The owner hesitated for 2 seconds and forced a fearful smile.
However, it's impossible to get everything. As you know, there will be some money spent during the process. The fees cost about 30%. Otherwise, you'll have to wait quite a while. After all, £9,500 isn't a small sum. For Toscarter's pier, it will take at least a week. It's because there are pirates frequenting this area, and there are often adventurers here to claim bounties. Therefore, it constantly has quite a bit of cash reserves. If you were in Oravi Island or anywhere else, it might take 2 weeks, or even a month.
£9,500 really wasn't a small sum. Klein clearly remembered that back in Tingen City, the Nighthawks team's monthly budget was only about £1,000. The budget was even split between the church and the police department. He thought for a moment and asked the bar's boss,
Do you know me?
Yes.
The owner hurriedly nodded. Klein swept his gaze across everyone and continued asking,
Can you figure out where I'm living?
Yes.
The owner didn't dare to lie. Klein tersely responded before using a flat and direct tone.
Send £6,000 to me before noon tomorrow. £6,000? That's less than 70%. That's about £600 short.
The owner was taken aback. never expecting the crazy adventurer to take the initiative to lower the price. Klein asked again.
Can you do it?
The additional £650 was his compensation for the bar. After all, he had left the bar in a mess. However, this wasn't something the crazy adventurer would say himself. He believed that the bar's owner wasn't a philanthropist. There was no way he would hand over the excess to others. The owner considered it seriously before replying.
Yes.
Even though the official process wouldn't be that fast, there was nothing he needed to worry about. This was because he planned on borrowing some of the money and using his savings to pay the bounty reward, which Gairman Sparrow wanted. To be able to earn several £100s at once wasn't something he would miss out on. Klein nodded and didn't speak another word. He turned around and walked to the bar's entrance. When he came near, he took out a few yellow pennies and threw them onto a tiny round table that still stood standing. Hiya. After some clinking sounds, the pennies spun to a stop. They numbered 8 pence. While doing this action, the black-suited Klein didn't stop walking. His figure soon disappeared from the entrance. The owner said with a surprised and blank look,
What's the meaning of that?
Most of the bouncers shook their heads with the same expression, indicating that they didn't know Gairman Sparrow's motive. Only a bouncer who had been standing guard by the door thought with a frown. Then he said with uncertainty, When he first entered, he took someone's cup of beer and threw it at Kirky's. Hakamas. This is the compensation for that cup of beer, as well as the cup? The bar fell into silence once again. Although the owner and bouncers couldn't accept such an explanation, they had the baffling feeling that this matched the style of the crazy adventurer, Gairman Sparrow.
Another set of clothes ruined. That's nearly £9. Thankfully, I made quite a lot this time. Yes, I'll have to make another set tomorrow.
After turning into another street, Klein stopped and observed himself. Maffo? It wasn't in a rush to return to the hotel he stayed at. He first followed the information provided by the head honcho of the Lowen's new party, Malsona, and found a policeman who was controlled by drugs. The man helped the gangs commit several sordid deeds, to the point of creating a scheme to kill a witness. He channeled his spirit to confirm his crimes before allowing creeping hunger to enjoy a true feast for the day. After doing that, Klein returned to his hotel via a carriage and entered his room. After setting up the altar, he used a ritual to send creeping hunger and the thin blood crystal above the gray fog. Sitting at the end of the long bronze table, Klein didn't hesitate to pick up the glove and release the soul of the Priest of Light. This Sequence 5 powerhouse had a thin face and an elegant bearing. He was an amiable elder, and he wore a simple white clergyman's robe. He bowed to express his gratitude to the mysterious existence who was concealed by the gray fog. Klein gently nodded as a response. Then he conjured pen and paper and wrote down the divination statement. The potion formulas for the sequences above the sun pathways, Sequence 7. Leaning back into his seat, he began using dream divination to communicate with the spirit. The grayish world quickly changed. He saw the Priest of Light roll open a piece of brownish goatskin in a room filled with sunlight. On it was a formula written in ancient Fasak. Sequence 6, Notary. Main ingredients: 1 set of crystallized roots of the Tree of Elders, 5 feathers of a spirit-packed bird. Supplementary ingredients: 100 ml of radiant spirit-packed trees juice, 1 golden-rimmed sunflower, 1 white-rimmed sunflower, 5 drops of aqua fern juice. After the scene paused for a few seconds, ripples surfaced again, outlining an opulent hall filled with golden statues. Inside the hall, a man covered in pure light that prevented one from looking straight at him said to a half-centenarian elder, "This is the potion formula for the Priest of Light. Remember, dispel the darkness and praise the sun." The elder received it in excitement and spread open the ancient goatskin. Sequence 5, Priest of Light. Main ingredients: red comb of a dawn rooster, a pure white brilliance rock. Supplementary ingredients: 5 grams of rosemary, 7 drops of fingered citron juice, 10 milliliters of rock water, 60 ml of a King of Dawn rooster's blood. Ritual. In pure darkness, bury your entire body in ice that usually doesn't melt before consuming the potion. The scene quickly vanished without any additional content. Klein wasn't surprised. He knew very well that when it involved the domain of a demigod, the 7 churches would often directly provide the potions and rituals without giving them the formula. At this moment, the Priest of Light's figure had mostly dispersed due to the forceful spirit channeling. His painful expression eased as he raised his head and spread out his arms as though he was embracing sunlight. The Priest of Light closed his eyes as he piously said, "Praise the sun." Those were his last words as his spirit body rapidly disintegrated and plummeted into the gray fog before completely disappearing. A pious believer. Klein sighed in comment. Following that, he recalled what he had seen in the dream and recorded the formula.
The main ingredient of a notary is the root crystal of the Tree of Elders. I remember that Miss Justice's psychiatrist potion requires the fruit of the Tree of Elders. From the looks of it, the spectator and sun pathways might be interchangeable at high sequences. The difficulty of the Priest of Light's ritual for most people is to find ice that usually doesn't melt, but it's different for Little Sun. To bury a living person in pure darkness in the forsaken land of God might lead to one's disappearance. A method to avoid this has to be figured out. Dispel the darkness and praise the sun is the acting method.
Klein considered for a moment before picking up the blood crystal produced by Kirchias's body. After a few seconds of consideration, he wrote down the corresponding divination statement in a serious manner. Its origins. Holding up the item and the piece of paper, Klein chanted softly once more and entered a dream. In the gray, blurry world, he saw the gigantic sailboat, the Death Announcer, with its bow and stern curving up high. He saw Kirkins climb up a soft ladder and arrive on the deck. Just as this Desire Apostle found his footing, a sticky black fog emanated from the deck's cracks. It was filled with a corruptive smell that enveloped Kirchias within it, corrupting and tainting all the shimmering objects on him, including his body. The gas quickly contracted and entered Kirchias' chest. The color gradually turned red, as though it was a bloodstain. Finally, everything was restored to normal. Kirchias genuflected as he said to the deck,
"Your will is my will, great Death Announcer."
Following that, the scene shattered as Klein opened his eyes. He sat straight and looked at the thin and long blood crystal. In thought, he silently said,
The Death Announcer is alive? A sealed artifact with living traits? This crystal is the source of its control over its crew, and it comes equipped with an intense corruptive force. Therefore, mystical items of low levels will be corrupted by it?
Chapter 687, Blatherer. Picking up the blood crystal and smelling the faint smell of sulfur, Klein could vaguely sense the corrosive powers hidden deep within. Legend has it that the abyss is an area with the greatest powers of corruption. Even an angel will fall and lose control there. The people guarding the abyss will eventually be assimilated by the abyss. The characteristic shown by the Desire Apostle does match this point.
Deepening the assimilation of a Desire Apostle?
Klein allowed his thoughts to wander. Soon he noticed a detail.
Kirchias had declared loyalty to the Death Announcer, and not to King of Immortality Agolito. Does this mean that the real King of Immortality is the Death Announcer? Agolito is only its spokesperson, or the administrator to infect targets? Rumor has it that Agolito isn't a demigod and isn't at Sequence 4. He relies solely on the Death Announcer to become one of the 4 kings. If that's the case, his actual situation is worse than I expected. He doesn't even have any autonomy. Of course, I can't eliminate the possibility that he's a Sequence 4, and his relationship with the Death Announcer is just one of cooperating partners. He's a demon after all. He's crafty and enjoys misleading people.
Klein contemplated for a few seconds before attempting another divination to see if he could obtain any revelation for the blood crystal's usage. He wasn't afraid that it would incur huge trouble for him, or it could be said that he was already prepared to receive any. Even if it was connected to the Devil King in the Abyss, it would at most be equivalent to the backlash from the True Creator or Eternal Blazing Sun. Klein believed that the gray fog had the means to defend against and suppress it.
This is the first time. I won't have my location locked on, so it's not a big problem. Besides, I already divined its origins, and there wasn't any danger. Therefore, the death announcer definitely isn't a Sequence 0 devil. Isn't that obvious? If it's really a Sequence 0 devil, or a sealed artifact at the level of King of Angels, Amon, then there's no need to avoid the joint forces of me, Queen Mystic, Admiral of Stars, and Anderson.
Klein realized that he had been frightening himself. He began to seriously begin the dream divination. In the blurry world, he saw a world covered with sticky black fog. A monster formed from dark-colored lumps of flesh squirmed over as its body cavity produced a raging roar. Blatherer. The scene changed, producing an ancient-looking altar which was splashed with fresh blood. Engraved on it were words and symbols filled with a corruptive feeling. It was as though they were shouting something. The hazy world shattered as Klein slowly opened his eyes and sat straight. He tapped his finger on the edge of the long bronze table and muttered to himself.
Blatherer refers to the state before the death announcer became a sealed artifact, a blatherer from the abyss. Or was it a gigantic monster formed from dark-colored lumps of flesh that became a sealed artifact after being killed by a blatherer? Regardless, the final confirmation is that there's one ship involved. Otherwise, it wouldn't have solidified into its present state. From the laughter of the person on the brink of losing control, it's very likely that the death announcer corresponds to Blatherer. A preliminary prediction is that it isn't a Grade 0 sealed artifact. Otherwise, King of Immortality would be the best of the four kings. It's probably a Sequence 3. Furthermore, Agalito clearly doesn't match well with it. The level of power shown isn't that high. It's at most Sequence 4. That corruptive altar that gave off a feeling as though it was shouting suggests that the blood crystal is able to summon a high-level devil. For example, the Blatherer.
Having no idea how to summon a high-level devil, nor having any plans on doing so, Klein casually threw the thin blood crystal, along with the Beyonder characteristic, the glowing crystal left behind by the Priest of Light, into the junk pile. Then he perfunctorily named the former, Aura of Blatherer. After doing this, Klein cautiously attempted another divination. It was to confirm if he would encounter any danger that night, danger that came from King of Immortality Agalito. In fact, he already had a prediction for the divination's outcome. King of Immortality Agalito wouldn't touch ground on the island. Firstly, it was because Taskarder had a hidden demigod. Ordinary Beyonders might not know, but the four kings would have some level of understanding. And it was unlikely Agalito would wish to have any head-on conflict with other demigods. Forcefully entering the territory of another person wasn't his style. Secondly, Klein's previous theory had produced a conclusion. Agalito didn't dare to leave the Death Announcer, and the Death Announcer had no way of going ashore. Indeed, Klein received the revelation that it would be very safe that night. This meant that he didn't need to change his appearance and move to another hotel. Around 9 in the morning of the next day, Klein saw Anderson Hood appear the moment he walked into the restaurant on the first floor and found a seat. Anderson immediately sat opposite him. This strongest hunter used his fingers to comb his short blonde hair, making it part 70-30. As he looked at Gehrman Sparrow, he tsked with a laugh.
Impressive. You managed to hunt Kirkis even when fighting 1-on-3. The way you dragged the devil's corpse downstairs has already spread throughout Taskarder Pier. It's said that every pirate with a bounty on their head has decided to distance themselves from your sights. They will not appear anywhere within a 5-kilometer radius from you.
Ever since he acquainted himself with Frank Lee, Klein had quit drinking milk. He raised his hand to order a cup of coffee, a piece of white bread, 2 toasts, a roasted pork sausage, and a plate of butter. Then he replied in an extremely calm manner.
Your ability at gathering intel is pretty good.
Anderson chuckled.
This is necessary for a hunter. The Taskarder adventurers are discussing a serious question as to who is the strongest hunter.
When Anderson saw Gehrman Sparrow look up with a cold and ambiguous gaze, his smile froze.
They've all chosen you. After all, this is the Sonya Sea, and not the Fog Sea.
Why did you need to add that second sentence? It's just asking for a beating.
Klein casually asked, as though being indifferent.
Anything else?
Anderson suddenly felt his comprehension skills were impeded. Klein repeated himself with more details.
Any other intel?
There is. Anderson suddenly signaled with his eyes. Mosona from the LOTM party has mysteriously disappeared last night. He mysteriously disappeared in his own room while being protected by countless guards. The official explanation is that Mosona has already died. The reason was that he possibly consecrated an evil god, or summoned a devil. No one believes that. It's because the Church of Storms has received an anonymous letter that has detailed records of Mosona's crimes, as well as evidence.
He stared intently at Gehrman Sparrow, hoping that the crazy adventurer would provide him with more information. He clearly remembered that Gehrman Sparrow had just asked him who deserved to be killed yesterday afternoon, and his answer was Mosona from the LOTM party. Klein tersely responded without saying anything more. At this moment, a figure rushed into the hotel. After looking around, he walked towards Klein in delight. He was none other than the bar owner from before. The owner took off a bonnet that had a depression in the middle and bowed.
Mr. Sparrow, it has already been confirmed, but the process will take another 2 days. After all, it's too large a sum. I know you'll be leaving today, so in order to not delay your schedule, I've decided to cover the bounty for now. Well, a portion of it comes from the bar's liquid cash, and a portion of it I loaned from my friends. Please make sure the number is right.
He deliberately spoke in detail to express his goodwill to Gehrman Sparrow while earning a profit. He wanted to befriend this crazy adventurer. As for whether King of Immortality would seek revenge on him, he wasn't too worried. Many a time, Kirchies would similarly claim bounties through him. After all, it was a reward for battles between pirates. Everyone liked gaining some additional cash. It was an unspoken rule at sea. Klein did a count of the thick stack of notes worth 6,000 pounds. He split them into a few stacks and placed them into different pockets. Then he said with a nod,
Not bad.
The bar owner heaved a sigh of relief. He then warily surveyed his surroundings before suppressing his voice.
You have to be careful. King of Immortality is a very vengeful person. He might intercept your ship at sea.
He didn't dare to say that he had the means to arrange for someone to board certain ships to depart in secret, afraid that it would be detected by King of Immortality and that he would suffer retaliation as a result. Klein replied indifferently.
I know.
The bar owner didn't speak further. He bowed once more and left the hotel's restaurant. Anderson looked at Gehrman Sparrow with a look of curiosity.
Do you have the means to leave?
Klein revealed a gentlemanly smile.
Guess.
The corners of Anderson's lips twitched.
I'm relieved by seeing your confidence. By the way, the tickets. It sets sail at 1:30 in the afternoon. Impressive. I thought I was rather amazing, earning 1,600 pounds in a night. Who knew?
Klein didn't respond as he began enjoying his breakfast. Later, he made a new suit to prevent himself from lacking a change of clothes. Time passed, and soon it was time to board the ship. Anderson held a newly bought suitcase and looked at Gehrman Sparrow beside him. He asked, seemingly worried,
Are we just leaving on this ship? The death announcer should be around the surrounding waters. The future left yesterday, after it was resupplied. He felt that leaving while under the wrath of the King of Immortality wasn't a wise choice. It's impossible for Gehrman Sparrow to be crazy enough to just storm right into death. Right? Unless this is his trap.
A thought came to Anderson as he had a hunch. Klein didn't turn his head to look at him. He directly boarded the liner with his suitcase. His thoughts were simple.
It was likely that the death announcer could sense something wrong with its aura. Based on the King of Immortality's modus operandi, it was unlikely for him to make a forceful assault. If his assumption was wrong, then the moment the death announcer appeared along the horizon, Klein would immediately enter his room and pray to himself. Then he would go above the gray fog to use the scepter to respond. He wanted to see who was stronger, the Blatherer at sea or the sea god.
This wasn't Klein's original plan. He had planned on using the sea god's scepter's ability to command sea creatures to find an underwater carriage for himself. Then, under layers of protection from his charms, he would pull Anderson out into the waters and escape the range of the death announcer's blockade before secretly boarding a liner he had tickets to. However, in consideration that the target of revenge had disappeared all of a sudden, it was possible that the King of Immortality would vent his anger on others by slaughtering liners indiscriminately. After all, pirates didn't abide by the law, nor did they come with any proper morals. After divining above the gray fog, Klein ultimately decided to leave brazenly. Chapter 688, Fruitless Wait. After hitting the deck, entering the cabin, and coming to his room, Klein was just about to say something when Anderson Hood spoke before he could.
That's not right. If I were the passengers on board this ship, I'd definitely be very afraid and nervous to see an adventurer who just offended the King of Immortality. I'd either get the captain or first mate to convince you to switch to another ship, or I would switch ships myself. To my surprise, all of them are especially calm.
This guy is very sharp. He's able to notice the minute details. Is this a real conspirer? Often acting happy-go-lucky, shooting off his mouth and being optimistic, but in actuality, he has silently grasped the situation and made his preparations.
As Klein opened the door with his key, he began considering if the ship had any real problems. At that moment, Anderson raised his hand to slap himself in the cheeks before laughing dryly.
I get it. It happened just recently. The matter is only spread among a number of adventurers and pirates. Typical tourists and sailors wouldn't even know of this. Besides, people who know what you look like are definitely people with good intel, not ordinary people.
Wow. He knows to answer his own questions. Do you know that time is life?
Klein lampooned and entered the first-class cabin. It wasn't that he wished to enjoy comfort, but that he needed to watch over Anderson Hood. He didn't want this unluckiest hunter to bring disaster to the liner, so he had gotten him to book a first-class cabin for themselves. With a suitcase in hand, he walked straight to the master bedroom. Klein pointed at the guest room and the servants' room, and he said to Anderson,
Choose one for yourself.
Anderson was taken aback as he turned to gape.
You're very used to this.
Of course, I have rich experience in interacting with hunters. If Danitz were here, I would designate him to the servants' room.
Klein didn't answer as he entered the master bedroom. 1:30. The steam engine whistled as the liner set off on time. After hanging his coat, Klein walked out of the master bedroom in pants, a shirt, and a vest. He looked out the window at the horizon. Thanks to the wind, the green waves ebbed as they spread along the outline of Toscarter Island, inch by inch.
That's no way to see the full situation.
Anderson came over and smiled.
You can only ensure that there are no problems from one of the flanks, and the death announcer might appear from the other flank or the front. The best option is to climb up to the crow's nest. Haha, there's definitely a crew member there, but an experienced hunter or pirate has 100 means to fool his senses.
Klein turned around and looked at Anderson with a stoic expression.
Well said. I'll leave this to you.
Anderson was taken aback. He snapped to his senses and asked in surprise,
You don't have any other means to observe?
Without any other means to observe, how was he to lay a trap for the King of Immortality? No.
Klein nodded his head with abnormal frankness.
I can only rely on you.
Who gave you the courage to leave under the King of Immortality's scrutiny?
Anderson was momentarily speechless, as he muttered to himself.
Don't stop me. I'm jumping ship.
He left the cabin room and headed for the bottom of the crow's nest.
In theory, King of Immortality Agalito, or the Death Announcer, should have long sensed my ill intent and sensed the danger that stems from me. Then, will they attack? Will they believe that I'm at the level 1 show myself as, and that I don't have any help? Or will they suspect that some powerhouse who can interfere in their premonition for danger did something?
Klein retracted his gaze from the door and looked once again at the sea outside. After a while, he suddenly sensed something as he quickly activated his spirit vision and turned his head to look to the side. The tall skeleton messenger burrowed out of the ground, the black flames in its eye sockets jumping slightly. It only revealed its upper body, so it wasn't too much taller than Klein. It looked at him at eye level and handed him a letter in its hand.
Mr. Ezek replied pretty quickly this time.
Klein politely nodded and received the neatly folded piece of paper. After the skeleton messenger collapsed and disappeared, he unfolded the letter against the sunlight coming in from the window.
I'm very happy to hear about your advancement. Your travels have been more interesting than I had imagined. Those waters are indeed very dangerous. I vaguely remember that it might have to do with the source of the cataclysm. As for why there's a remnant aura of ancient death there, I'm not too sure. I will keep your warning in mind. Before completely recovering my memories, I will not enter those waters. The true creator's ravings aren't pleasant to the ears. I'm somewhat interested in the ring worn by Admiral Hell. However, I've recently been embroiled in some past matters. I might need some time before I pay him a visit.
Upon seeing this, Klein couldn't help but smile.
After replying to Mr. Ezek, I'll tell him that I have the means to lock onto Admiral Hell Ludwell's location. I must get him to bring me along with him when he pays a visit. Oh no, I didn't divine the location of the Murloc cufflink recently. I'm not sure if Ludwell has discovered it or thrown it away. Yes, I'll divine it above the gray fog after I confirm that the death announcer isn't pursuing me.
Moving his gaze away, Klein continued reading.
The ancient chronicles I received from Katerina does mention matters regarding artificial death. To put it simply, the former royal family of the Balaam Empire, present upper echelons of the numinous episcopate, had gained inspiration from the hidden sage's sudden coming to life and turning anthropomorphic. They wished to let death, which is at present only a concept, to experience something similar. There's a possibility of it being fulfilled. Due to the indestructibility of Beyonder characteristics, the perishing of death doesn't mean that the corresponding Beyonder characteristics and authority has been completely lost. According to the chronicles, the corresponding research hasn't reached a breakthrough, but that was from centuries ago. The sequence 4 corresponding to Seer is Bizarro Sorcerer. The powerhouses from the Antigonus and Zaratul family left me with a deep impression. Even though I've already forgotten the details, my recollections are still able to bring me some feelings of fear. As for where to get the formula and ingredients, I'm not sure. Perhaps you can consider switching to neighboring pathways. I've already recalled matters regarding this. You can choose Sequence 4 Secret Sorcerer of the Apprentice pathway or Sequence 4 Parasite of the Marauder pathway. However, I vaguely remember that these 3 pathways only allow switching at Sequence 3.
Indeed. There's only Erodes left.
Klein forcefully produced a grin. After reading the reply, he took out a pen and paper and wrote down parts of the content he had already thought of, as well as asking about the exact definition of a mythical creature. After putting down the pen and paper, he wasn't in a hurry to summon the messenger. He planned to wait for the death announcer to appear before adding the request for help into the letter and then mailing it out. This way, he could hold out for some time with the Sea God's scepter, and he might even have Mr. Ezek tear through the spirit world to rescue him. When the time came, the two of them could join forces and have a chance to claim the death announcer as theirs. As for why he didn't write it ahead of time, it was because a devil might not come again due to their premonition for danger. Of course, Klein had no idea whether they could sense the exact contents of his current ill intent. After patiently waiting for a few hours, Klein heard the door open. When he looked back, he saw Anderson stroking the side of his face. He walked in with mixed emotions.
The death announcer hasn't appeared. We've completely left the waters around Toscarter Island. VDD. The King of Immortality actually didn't seek revenge. This fellow was more impressive than I imagined.
Anderson sighed inwardly. Klein gave a regretful nod, walked to his coat rack, and took his coat and hat in preparation to head for the dining hall. Pause. In a secret chamber, a small red gloves team was discussing a case they were on. Sole assurer soest held a chalk and pointed at a blackboard.
The devil murder case this time has some similarities with the assassination of Duke Negan in Backland. First, a human skin with its own smell and aura appeared. This is something that hasn't appeared in many of the devil-related cases in the past. Second, there's more than one devil. They take turns wearing the human skin in order to carry out their normal activities to conceal their partner's evil acts. Finally, they're suspected of belonging to the Blatherer family.
At that moment, Leonard, who appeared to be listening attentively in the corner, couldn't help but recall something when his captain mentioned Backland. Having witnessed the complete destruction of the underground ruin, he wanted to find time for himself to investigate the mysterious detective, Sherlock Moriarty. He had planned on starting from Sherlock Moriarty's former landlord, but his team took on an emergency case and began to investigate a new series of serial murders. He had no choice but to leave Backland.
Leonard, what's your take on this?
After Soest finished his briefing, he named Leonard Mitchell to continue. Leonard turned his head to the side in a daze and looked at the content on the blackboard. He quickly organized his words and said,
I believe that it's not only a form of concealment, but is also a requirement of a particular ritual. Captain Soest, as you know, devils have many kinds of blasphemous and evil rituals.
Reasonable deduction.
Soest then gestured for another team member to speak his piece.
Phew. Thankfully, old man has recently been catching me up on devil studies.
Leonard heaved a sigh of relief and began attentively listening to the discussion of his team. After a 2-day voyage, the liner safely arrived at Oravi Island. After checking into a hotel, Klein said to Anderson Hood,
Wait here for me. That demigod doesn't like strangers suddenly visiting.
He didn't wish to expose the contact person of the life school of thought.
I hope I'll live to see him.
Anderson smiled bitterly as he wished himself good luck. The corners of Klein's mouth twitched, and he gave up saying anything further. He rode on a carriage and went straight for the Church of Storms' Street Draco Cathedral. Before long, he arrived once again in the small room in the magnificent bell tower, where he saw the tall, extremely asymmetrical, and ugly bellman Carnot. After hearing Gairman Sparrow's intentions, the hunched Carnot nodded.
I'll bring you to Mr. Ricardo. He has already recovered and is no longer where he originally was.
All right.
Just as Klein gave a response, he suddenly recalled that Carnot was a product of the Church of Earth Mother's human body refining. He then asked a question.
Do you know Frank Lee?
Chapter 689. That's it. Bellman Carnot's expression immediately turned odd when he heard Frank Lee's name.
Yes, he's a kind and pure person, but at times his pureness is terrifying.
Indeed.
Klein made way and allowed the bellman to walk down the stairs. As he followed him down, he asked,
Are you familiar with him?
Carnot silently walked ahead, and after a while he said with his back facing Gairman Sparrow,
I'm a failed product, filled with all kinds of problems. I was always mocked, and only Frank was one of the few who looked at me normally, treating me as someone with a real soul.
Why did he leave the Church of Earth Mother?
Klein asked, despite knowing the answer. Carnot came out of the bell tower, answering while getting his bearings.
I do not know about the specifics. He's an orphan. He grew up in the cloister from a young age. He really treats the church as a family and views Earth Mother as his mother. He has many strange ideas. He had the opportunity of becoming a diocese bishop, but he was later nearly sent to a tribunal for being sacrilegious.
Frank mentioned this before. He was trying to crossbreed a bull, a cow, and wheat together. To be frank, if it were me, I would have sent him to the tribunal as well. This guy was fine early on, because of his low sequence, limiting what he can do.
Klein mumbled and followed Carnot down another street and arrived in the alley behind St. Draco Cathedral. Carnot walked in front of an ordinary building, pulled the doorbell thrice, each tug lasting 2 seconds. After a while, thudding sounds approached as the door creaked open. Klein immediately saw an elder in a black short coat with a hard cane. His hair was as white as snow, but he didn't have any obvious wrinkles. He wore a black eye mask around his eyes.
Mr. Counselor, Mr. Gehrman Sparrow is here to pay you a visit.
Counselor Ricciardo? He's Counselor Ricciardo? He's blind?
Previously, Klein had only heard his voice without meeting him. It was no wonder he was surprised. Ricardo turned his ear to the side and slowly turned his head towards Gehrman Sparrow and chuckled.
Sorry, I can only meet you this way. When I woke up this morning, I suddenly had a premonition that I mustn't open my eyes to see anything today. To prevent any accidents, I wore an eye mask.
You can actually do that. He's in no way inferior as a charlatan.
Klein was momentarily amused and surprised. Following that, he understood the correct interpretation of his premonition. He didn't want to see him. He remembered that beyonders from the monster pathway were able to see things others couldn't see. Therefore, Snake of Mercury Will Auceptin was able to sense his uniqueness. And back in Tingen's city, Ademisol's eyes bled, and he collapsed to the ground simply from seeing him. Counselor Ricardo sensed the danger and wore an eye mask ahead of time.
Sigh. If not for that, I was planning on asking what he can see.
Klein didn't have any penchant about forcing others to harm themselves. He held back his thoughts and asked,
Do you have clues to the mystical item I need?
Not for now.
Ricardo said with a smile.
After I recovered from my injuries, I went to Bayam. I was lucky that there was some adjustments to the upper echelons of the Navy and Governor General's office, so I successfully rescued Roy King, but it wasted quite a bit of my time.
Klein had expected this, as he said, without any signs of surprise.
Then, I'll use this request to get another form of help. I have a friend who is plagued with bad luck after interacting with a mural left behind by the Angel of Fate. He needs it completely removed.
Ricciardo thought for a moment before saying,
No problem. Bring me over to him. Don't allow him to leave his residence, or there might be accidents.
Klein nodded and walked towards the alley with his suitcase in hand. He took the opportunity to ask,
Mr. Counselor, what do you know about the Mother Tree of Desire?
From Klein's point of view, the Life School of Thought and the Rose School of Thought were at odds with each other, so it was likely that they knew each other very well. With cane in hand, Ricardo slowly walked behind him to his right. He didn't need anyone to help him. It was as though he wasn't wearing an eye mask. He chuckled.
The Mother Tree of Desire is the Rose School of Thought's manifestation of the chained God. However, I suspect that the truth is actually the reverse. The chained God is one of the Mother Tree of Desire's many manifestations. My reasoning is that Red Light Moria claims that the mutant pathway's Sequence 0 is still unoccupied. Haha, you know about Sequence 0, right?
Yes.
Klein succinctly answered. He didn't even express his knowledge of the Great White Brotherhood. Ricardo tersely acknowledged.
In short, no one knows the true identity of the Mother Tree of Desire, nor does anyone know what her pathway is. Perhaps that's her true identity. In addition, I can provide some indirect information. The Mother Tree of Desire and the primordial moon are at odds. There seems to be some irreconcilable conflict between them, and it's because of this that the Rose School of Thought views us as an enemy. However, at times, the Mother Tree of Desire and the primordial moon seem to have a subtle relationship. You might find it hard to imagine that the southern continent's shaman king, who worships the moon, joined the Rose School of Thought. The seven churches hate the true creator, primordial demoness, dark side of the universe, and the other evil gods, but their hatred for the primordial moon and Mother Tree of Desire runs even deeper. Similarly, the Aurora Order, Demoness Sect, Blood Sanctify Sect, and Moses Ascetic Order do not like the Rose School of Thought.
That's interesting. Mother Tree of Desire is one of the two most isolated ones?
Klein stopped a carriage while in thought as he watched Carnot help Ricciardo up the carriage. He then entered the carriage and instructed the driver to bring them to a nearby hotel. Before long, the carriage arrived at their destination. Just as Klein was about to get off, he suddenly heard a loud bang. A rumbling explosion shook the entire street as glass fragments from a window fell to the ground.
No way. Could it be caused by Anderson's bad luck?
Klein's spiritual intuition told him that it was the case, but the unluckiest hunter had apparently lived. He turned his head to look out the carriage and saw that a huge chunk of wall had collapsed from the hotel's second floor. Flames and smoke remained. At this moment, a figure with disheveled blonde hair and messy clothes stood below as he muttered,
To think that there's such a daring person to trade arms in a hotel. New kinds of explosives, especially. He nearly caused me to die without even knowing why. My suitcase.
Klein looked down at the suitcase he was carrying and suddenly felt how great it was to be cautious. He turned around and helped Ricardo down the carriage. Anderson sensed something as he turned his head to say with a bitter smile,
The arms dealers these days are too unprofessional. Thankfully, it's daytime, and there aren't many people in the hotel. The owner sure is pitiful, having to suffer a certain loss. However, the gold they carry shouldn't be destroyed that easily. It should make up for his loss.
I think your bad luck is responsible for a large part of the accountability.
Klein nodded and said to Ricciardo,
It's him.
Ricciardo then turned his head to Anderson, but his gaze was completely blocked by the black eye mask. He paused for a few seconds before smiling.
Give me a gold coin.
Oh?
Anderson took out a Lowen gold coin from the inside of his clothes, feeling suspect. Then, he smiled at Gehrman Sparrow.
Tradition from my hometown. We sew a tiny pocket on the inside of our clothes to keep a few coins. I originally didn't believe in it, but I've been just too unlucky recently.
As he spoke, he handed the gold coin to Ricardo. Ricardo received the gold coin, slowly closed his fingers before retracting his hand. He then laughed and said,
All right. Your bad luck has been dispelled.
Ah?
Anderson stood there in shock as he looked at Gehrman Sparrow, as though saying,
That's it? Did you get a fraud?
Klein was surprised as well, but he chose to believe Ricciardo. After all, he was a fate counselor. Ricciardo put away the gold coin and chuckled.
The bad luck you received this time wasn't child's play. If you don't believe me, you can head over to the casino to try your luck.
Makes sense.
Anderson clapped and immediately got directions for the nearest casino from a passerby. After a while, he returned in a clean and decent jacket. He looked at Ricciardo and instinctively opened his mouth. He was suddenly taken aback as he forcibly closed his mouth and thanked him with a grin. After the demigod was sent on a carriage, he leaned in towards Gehrman Sparrow and wistfully said,
I was planning on saying that although you're blind, you really are amazing when it comes to the domain of fate. Thankfully, I recalled in time that he is a demigod.
If you had really said that, you might have the chance of becoming the hunter who died immediately after having his bad luck removed.
Klein didn't echo his sentiments as he said,
Now, can you tell me the clues to that revolver?
As creeping hunger had great limitations, he still wished for a more conventional, offensive, mystical item. Anderson combed his hair and chuckled.
It's in Byam. It's from a friend I used to know, a very powerful adventurer. As he got sick of the unstable and dangerous life, he used his savings to buy a few spice gardens and found a lady to marry. He then completely left this line of work we're in. He recently had a child, and his thoughts changed again. He began to wish that his child would be brought up in a better and safer environment, with better educational prospects, so he plans on moving to Backland. There are the best grammar schools and public schools there. Heh. He doesn't wish to rent a place in Backland, but he also doesn't plan on selling his gardens that constantly earn him money. He happens to have an excess when it comes to mystical items, so he plans on selling that revolver. Back then I was in a rush to follow the treasure hunting expedition into those waters, so I'm not sure if he succeeded in the end. However, few people can buy something worth nearly £10,000 at once, so the transaction won't close that easily.
All right. Bring me to him.
Klein replied simply, pause. At that moment on the Golden Dream, Danitz was horrified to realize a problem. His captain hadn't appeared in 3 days. Chapter 690, Miss Messenger. Under the sunlight, the Golden Dream emitted golden lusters as if it was a mobile treasure. Danitz stood inside the captain's cabin, pacing about endlessly. He attempted to recall everything that had happened over the past few days in a bid to find a clue. 3 days ago, his captain, Vice Admiral Iceberg Edwina, wanted to do a study in which she might not appear for 10 to 20 hours. Therefore, all corresponding classes were canceled. In regards to this, Danitz and company didn't find it odd. These happened frequently. They were delighted that they didn't need to attend classes. Hence, there was drinking, singing, and a bonfire party held on the ship. They were only short of burning down the Golden Dream, but they had a great time. But with the passage of time, everyone gradually felt that something was amiss, including the somewhat slow Danitz. Their captain, who should have finished her studies within 24 hours, didn't appear the next day. She didn't even get anyone to send her food or light beer, which was used as water. After patiently waiting for half a day without seeing Vice Admiral Iceberg Edwina, the sailors mustered the courage to knock on her door. To their horror, there wasn't any response. Under the first mate, Brew Walls's lead, the pirates opened the captain's cabin and found it empty. They then went to the collector's room and other places, but they failed to find her. Based on past experiences, their initial guess was that their captain had suddenly thought of something and left the Golden Dream in a rush while using some mystical technique or emulating someone else's beyond her powers without leaving a letter behind. Later, Danitz and company attempted to contact her using methods like the Soulfall ritual, but they failed to receive a response. All they could do was search the captain's cabin and other places as they convinced themselves to wait patiently. 3 days passed, but Vice Admiral Iceberg Edwina didn't appear nor reply. It left the sailors panicking. Danitz turned towards flowery bow-tie Jodison in frustration.
Dogshot, any results from your divination? Didn't you claim to be an expert?
Jodison, with his black hair that was dyed gold, rubbed his temples and said in a rather mellow voice,
They failed. Every divination method used to find her has failed. But for now it can be confirmed that Captain is still alive. It's just that her whereabouts are unknown.
The first mate, Walls, who had short, grayish, curly hair, nudged his monocle and said,
We need to seek help. None of Captain's collections have been lost. She didn't even bring her essential mystical items with her when she left. This means that the situation was very sudden and unexpected.
Another boatswain, whose waist was swollen, Beryl Daniels asked anxiously.
Whose help can we seek?
Brew Walls raised his silver-patterned knife to his aquiline nose and said,
Return to the western shore.
Between the lines, he was hinting at seeking the Church of the God of Knowledge and Wisdom that backed Vice Admiral Iceberg Edwina, flowery bow tie, Jodison said.
That won't do. To go from the pirates' playground to the western shore, we will need to pass the Sonia Sea, the North Sea, and the Berserk Sea. Then, we will cruise through the Fog Sea for a very long period of time. Captain can't wait that long. Anything might happen to her at any time. We have to immediately find someone we can quickly contact and provide us with help on short notice.
Danitz wanted to curse Dogsh*T when he suddenly had a light bulb moment. There was only one person he could quickly contact, and that was Gehrman Sparrow. Furthermore, this crazy adventurer had never hid the fact that he was good at divination, and also had a mysterious background.
Perhaps that madman can find Captain. He's often able to do the impossible.
Danitz tugged at his collar as he felt his worry and frustration ease a little. He raised his chest and looked around. Then he cleared his throat and said,
I have a candidate. I can immediately contact him. Besides, he's very good at divination.
Just as he said that, Gourmet Brew Walls, Flowery, Bow-Tie Jodison, Iron Skin, Beryl, and company turned their heads at him in unison. With their eyes red, they roared.
What are you waiting for?
Pause. Danitz silently left the captain's cabin and returned to his room. He unfolded a piece of paper, picked up a fountain pen, and followed his captain's teachings by writing a greeting followed by some pleasantries. Suddenly, he stopped writing. He felt that the excessive politeness and small talk didn't match his goals for seeking help. Danitz cursed as he tore up the piece of paper.
Dogshit.
Right on the heels of that, he wrote on a new piece of paper.
Help! Captain has vanished.
Danitz cursed himself again as he ripped up the second letter.
Well, although Gehrman Sparrow is a madman who can't be comprehended with common sense, he probably won't be able to understand such a letter. Dogsh!
He calmed himself down and contemplated for a few seconds before penning a third time. This time, He simply wrote what happened after his captain's disappearance. He also included the location of the Golden Dream, and he minced his words by asking Mr. Gehrman Sparrow if he could provide help to a cooperating partner. Just as Danis folded the letter, he suddenly realized that he had forgotten something.
Divination needs something.
He rushed back to the captain's cabin and found a pearl earring that Vice Admiral Iceberg Edwina often wore. After doing all of this, he took out his notebook that was filled with all sorts of mysticism knowledge. He flipped to the corresponding page and unfamiliarly set up a messenger summoning ritual with his past experience. After placing a gold coin on the altar, he took 2 steps back and recited in ancient Hermes,
I summon in my name, the spirit that wanders about the unfounded, the friendly creature that can be subordinated, the messenger that belongs to Gehrman Sparrow.
Howling winds resonated as the candlelight on the altar rapidly burgeoned before being dyed a pale whiteness. Reinette Tinneker appeared at a decent speed, still wearing her complicated black dress while holding 4 beautiful and identical heads. Danis imagined that the messenger would bite the gold coin in the envelope containing the paper and earring like the last time, but to his surprise, the 4 heads in Reinette Tinneker's hand automatically turned around, surveying the area before finally looking towards the captain's cabin. A few seconds later, 2 of the heads in Reinette Tinneker's hand bit down onto the gold coin and the envelope. After the strange messenger vanished, Danis exhaled and wiped his forehead, feeling a baffling sense of pressure. Orvie Island, in the room of another hotel. Klein was just about to get Anderson Hood, who had won quite a fair bit of money, to purchase the tickets to City of Generosity Bayham when his spiritual perception was triggered. He quickly activated his spirit vision and saw his headless messenger, Reinette Tinneker, appear by his side at some point in time. In her hands were 4 beautiful heads.
She's not like the skeleton messengers who I can detect the moment they appear. My spiritual perception is triggered only after she completely enters the real world.
Klein received a letter from the teeth of one of Reinette Tinneker's head while in thought. At the same time, he noticed that Anderson's spiritual perception was no way weaker than his. He too had reacted. Anderson asked in disbelief, as though he had heard of such things but had never seen them before.
This is a messenger?
Klein nodded without expression as he tore open the letter.
A pearl earring?
Klein unfolded the letter in puzzlement. By his side, Anderson came over out of curiosity as he sized up Reinette Tinneker as he TSKED.
There's an indescribable sense of bloody beauty.
Just as he said that, his hand suddenly rose up to grab himself by the throat. The grip was so tight that his tongue extended out as he foamed at the mouth. As for Reinette Tinneker, who had nothing above her neck, she didn't show any further reaction. Klein turned his head over and seriously studied the situation before looking at his messenger. He then silently mumbled,
Resembles Miss Sharon's abilities. Miss Messenger belongs to the prisoner pathway? No, I can't be sure. She's a spirit world creature, so being good at such things is very normal.
Realizing that Anderson was about to suffocate, Klein leisurely said,
That's enough. He still needs to lead me somewhere.
One of the heads in Reinette Tinneker's hand turned over as she glanced at Anderson with her bloodshot eyes for a second. Following that, each of the heads' mouths spoke one after the other.
Still, can, lead, you, by, making, into, zombie.
As she said that, Anderson's hands finally stopped and left his own neck, leaving obvious, deep finger marks on it. You. The strongest hunter panted as he bent his back, retching. Klein quickly scanned the letter and saw that it was from Danis. This famous pirate wrote to him, saying that Vice Admiral Iceberg had mysteriously vanished and was in need of help. Just as he moved his gaze away from the letter, Klein was surprised to see Reinette Tinneker was still around.
This doesn't make mystical sense. Shouldn't a messenger disappear after sending the letter, appearing only when summoned again?
Klein deliberated and asked out of curiosity,
Is there anything else?
Awaiting. Your. Reply. Letter.
Raynette's four heads said one after the other.
How do you know that I'll reply?
Klein glanced at Anderson, who hadn't recovered, and confirmed that the strongest hunter didn't notice the words that didn't match Gehrman's persona. The heads in Raynette's hand said once again,
Her disappearances. Very odd.
How do you know that?
Klein instantly imagined that Miss Messenger had secretly read Danitz's letter. The heads with the long blonde hair simply rolled up and said a phrase each, forming a complete sentence.
I investigated the ship's situation.
My messenger is a part-time scout. Miss Raynette Tinneker, will you be a hired goon in the future? I wonder if I need to make additional payment.
As Klein lampooned in thought, he said,
No rush. I'll reply later.
he planned on heading above the gray fog to use Vice Admiral Iceberg Edwina's earring to do a divination. Raynette Tinneker didn't say a word as she vanished silently.
Ahem. Your messenger. Your messenger is a demigod?
Anderson finally recovered as he stood straight. He gave Gehrman Sparrow a flabbergasted look,